and welcome to the LPOG podcast. LPOG, LPOG, also known as Love, Peace, Oolichan, Greece. I'm the host of the podcast, Kiefer Carlson, and I'm joined by a close personal friend, Patrick Shannon. That's the only intro I'm going to get you. Patrick, what do you want the people to know about you? Come on. What's going on?
Singaitla, Hawa, Kiefer, Hawa for having me on here. Kiefer and I go way back to the year 2012 when we were just young bucks attempting to grow mullets. Kiefer definitely won in that competition there. I have conceded. But I'm a filmmaker. I'm a designer. Some would describe some of my work kind of around the realm of social innovation. So trying to create positive social change through media, technology, art, culture, all that kind of stuff. And so I'm based on Haida Gwaii.
Yeah, you're based on Haida Gwaii, which you've recently been spending, I would say, a lot of time on, more so than you would have if we weren't in, the current state. I think that's what we should maybe lead off with, of course, is the coronavirus and how has it affected you and, your different endeavors. Like, I think we were talking the other day and you said you had to cancel, 20 flights?
Yeah, I had a lot of flights planned. I was supposed to speak at a culture summit in Abu Dhabi in the Middle East and make stops over in Europe and down the US. And so, I was coming from Northern Ontario, where I was working in a couple fly-in only Indigenous communities on media projects, and was in Toronto when everything kind of started happening. And so it was wild walking around and seeing the streets just completely empty, and then flying home and having to do the whole isolation. So it's definitely a big switch because I'm usually on the road for a good 8 to 10 months of the year. So it's actually really refreshing to be home for a change.
What was that like traveling? Because I remember seeing your posts about being in Toronto, and that's like essentially when everything got shut down, like the border got shut down, which was huge. International flights all got shut down, and then they started limiting even domestic flights. So was it like a struggle to get a flight out of Toronto?
No. All the flights were still happening. Although I'm very thankful I flew back when I did, because I was on the second to last plane to Haida Gwaii from Vancouver before everything was canceled.
Yeah. Now, being from Haida Gwaii, you kind of joke like this. That's like the place to be during a pandemic. Like that, there's always that talk of a zombie apocalypse and how Haida Gwaii would be fine if there was said zombie. So there's definitely, is there a sense of safety you feel being home?
I definitely would not want to be anywhere else in the world. Haida Gwaii is home, but Haida Gwaii is also an amazing community that I think has definitely during these times have shown how self-sustainable it can be. And I think a lot of people are moving in that direction. Like you see how everyone is baking sourdough at their houses or making their own soap. Well, people have been doing it on Haida Gwaii for a while, so we've got the leg up there, and everyone's starting gardens. Even myself, I'm going to start growing some veggies. So it's somewhere that I'm very thankful to be from.
What's in your garden?
Right now, just pretty flowers. I'm in the process of building garden beds, but I've gotten many offers from friends like, you want some veggie starters? You want some carrots? You want some lettuce? So you never know. I'll make myself a sandwich eventually from my yard.
I'm looking at getting a couple more fruit trees. We have a cherry tree in our backyard, which is dope, but I'm looking at some plums and potentially some apples is in our near future. But we've definitely invested in our home a lot more. And I noticed you were painting your home, getting things up. So obviously the home renovation bug has hit yourself as well. Although I can't even count how many times I've seen you paint different things or build different things. I mean, can we talk for 1 second about your bus? Is that still going on right now? Your media bus that you have? Because that, to me, look,
yeah.
I remember seeing it's an old Eagle Transit bus from Haida Gwaii. Those who know, is it the Eagle Transit bus?
Yeah, it's an Eagle Transit bus.
Yeah, so it's basically like Haida Gwaii's Pimp My Ride for a filmmaker.
Yeah, pretty much. Who was in that exhibit?
You're the Haida exhibit.
Yeah, the Haida exhibit. It was really exciting. So I'm one of those people that gets excited about things really quick and figure out, you know what, I'm just going to jump into it. And so I do a lot of youth filmmaking projects on Haida Gwaii. And one of the biggest challenges over the past few years of working with youth on Haida Gwaii is that we've got very few places that we can actually work. The coffee shop up in Massachusetts would close down around 4:30. I'm like, okay, what do we do now? We only had really an hour to work with the kids, to write, to shoot. And so with a lack of really any infrastructure or resources, I saw a bus was for sale and like, you know what? I might buy this bus. And so I was able to snag one at a really great deal. And then we started using it right away for the Haida Gwaii Youth Assembly. That was our media bus, and like the youth loved it. And I just remember one of my youth that I work with quite a bit. He looks at me, he's like, because I'd also got a boat earlier in the summer, like an inflatable one. It's like, first you get a boat, now you bought a bus. Are you going through like a quarter life crisis right now? And I basically was like, I'm hashtag over 30 now, and definitely going for the big toys. But when he saw us actually using it and how we can like fill the space and create films, he's like, okay, I get it now. Mm-hmm. And so, I was lucky enough to get an amazing artist, a friend of mine, Peter Thomas, who's a Swampy Cree muralist from Winnipeg. And so I flew him to Haida Gwaii, and he was only able to be here for a few days before he had to go to his next project, but he painted the entire internative bus in like a day, which is wild, just with spray paint. And I've got a little video kind of on my Instagram to show that.
Oh, I see. I love it. I think it's definitely, it's art on wheels, 100%. And what I love even more about that is okay, it might be a little bit of a touchy subject, but you're on Haida Gwaii. You're surrounded by some of the world's greatest artists, but you're such a global thinker. You know what I mean? Like, who flies someone in from Saskatoon or where? Sorry, Saskatchewan.
Winnipeg.
Sorry, I tuned out there. But bring them in and to do something like that. And your youth work. You don't just you're all over the map. You went to where did you get snowed in that one time and you couldn't leave the community for so long? So you just ended up. Project.
Yeah, I was up in Nunavut for weeks in Chesterfield Inlet, and once again a fly-in-only community. But pro tip: try not to fly into fly-in-only communities during the winter when there are blizzards happening regularly. Otherwise, you might get stuck for weeks, like I did.
Oh, we lost the audio here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So it's just a glitch there. Yeah, little bumps in the road here on the LPOG podcast. But yeah, where do you think that global sense of community comes, or the national sense of community? Because like essentially, I feel like when you go to these different communities, you just have this innate ability to become one of the community members. When do you
sorry, say that one more time. That last bit.
You have a sense of like being able to ingrain yourself in the part of these different communities with the projects that you do. Like, when did you really hone in on that? Like, when did you realize, like, we're all one community?
Mm-hmm. I think it was when I originally first moved back home in 2013. I had been living off the res for about 10 years at that point and got a taste of the big city and started to travel for the first time in my life. Not very far, but got to kind of see other cultures. And that was a really amazing thing, especially as an artist and creative person. You realize there's so much beauty in the world and there's so many amazing ideas to try and address many of the challenges that we face, either in Indigenous communities, remote, urban, whatever. You see that, I come from Haida Gwaii, which is an archipelago on the northwest coast. We're pretty isolated, but a lot of the challenges that we have aren't unique to us. Some things are unique, but most of the things you see all over in different communities, not only across British Columbia or Canada, but internationally as well. And so it's been really amazing to be able to travel to see the beauty in cultures around the world and take inspiration from that, but also be able to share what we have, because we have such a strong, beautiful culture as well. And that's one thing Haidas are known for, is really putting ourselves out there. So I feel like I'm just kind of continuing on that traditional nomadic spirit that we had. Well, not nomadic, but like that traveling spirit that we had with canoes. I feel like we just do that with airplanes now.
Now, I feel like for yourself, like you have your priorities in order. Like you could, like, I don't feel like you chase money. You know what I mean? Like, some people, it's all about the bottom line, how much money they can make off of this project, off of that project. I feel like you pick the projects that are going to fill up your spirit more. Like, you do a lot of youth led projects, and I know you must turn down projects as well. So is that, am I out of line by saying that?
No, for me, coming from the res, money's never really been a big thing. We've always had community. You've always had a full belly, especially Haidas. We've got very full bellies all the time. And yeah. And so money was never like the pursuit of money was never really a big part of it. And I kind of view money kind of like water. As long as you have enough to live, you're fine, but it comes and goes. And if you really obsess over, having more, then you miss out on everything else that's beautiful. And for me, I'm inspired more so about the strength and resilience in one another. And I want to contribute as much as I can through my skill sets to try and make this world better. Because if we're not trying to give back to our communities and being a part of that community, whether it's a small town, village, or it's a global community, I feel like it's a wasted opportunity. And every single person can make a big impact. We just kind of have to want to prioritize that. And so, yeah, I've definitely been very fortunate to have been able to do work that I feel passionate about and also be able to get by. So it's taken a while, but it's still happening.
And of course, well, I mean, it's such a strange time that we're living in. And I hate to bring it back to the coronavirus, but I'm just curious into your thought. Like, what was your feelings when everything was kind of happening, like the major sporting events getting shut down and everything? Did you have a general panic and thinking that this could, this is obviously going to, moving forward, it's going to change travel? Does that change your future plans for your business? Like, what does the future look like for you and the new future that we have set in front of us, which is kind of unknown?
Yeah, it's a huge unknown, but just like out of every single kind of big, recession or something big like this, we really progress and build new skill sets. I love what I'm seeing right now with people really starting to take advantage and leverage technology and media in a way that is very constructive and not just a consumptive thing that we, just binge Netflix or go on YouTube. We can actually start creating, we can start learning. Like all of this stuff existed, but I don't think we really took advantage of it or use it to its potential. And I'm seeing that right now. So we're becoming more connected than we ever were, despite being so isolated. And I've also seen so much compassion that's come out of this. People just calling to check in, which I've never had before. We usually don't have enough time, or we're so, caught up with work. And this, I think, has been like a big slowdown, almost like a big reset for a lot of people, and just reassessing our priorities and kind of holding a mirror up to us and the society that we've created, and just looking, is this right? Is this really what we should be prioritizing? And I feel for a lot of people, and that's like the biggest thing is like a lot of people are struggling, a lot of people are suffering, but I still see that resilience, and I think we're going to come out of this even stronger than we were before.
Yeah, but it's, again, great answer, by the way. A little bit taken aback by it. Because for myself, I'm nervous too. I had all these plans. I love speaking and I love being in front of people. But obviously here we are in this new era. And, even if the coronavirus, maybe this is how we would have talked, but I'm sure you would have been passing through and been able to stop in for a conversation. But it's all being put on hold, and it's so uncertain. And it is nice to see the resiliency and the checkups. I was definitely one of those people. I was calling everybody. I bugged the heck out of my family like crazy. And, for me, I'm still feeling the effects. Like, I'm sad, man. Like, I don't get to come home to Haida Gwaii, like the 14-day, like I respect Haida Gwaii so much and the community that it is, that I'm not just going to come home and, break a 14-day quarantine just, so I can enjoy, my homeland. Once, it's in the safe, I feel super comfortable coming home, and I will come home as soon as I can. But I just feel like my he's missing out on so much opportunities here to grow that love for Haida Gwaii. It's not going to take much. It's going to be one trip home, and obviously he's going to fall in love. But it's just so sad to think that I can't just go home. Like, even though I had no plans going home this month, like, it's just sad to know that I can't. You know what I mean?
It's kind of like you can't appreciate something until you've been deprived of it. And that's kind of how I felt about Haida Gwaii when I moved down to the city. I didn't realize how special of a place this was. And really, this goes for any of our communities. We can't truly appreciate it till we leave, or we can't have access to it and really realize how special it is. And so I think when things do loosen up, when things start becoming safer for everyone, we're going to have a renewed appreciation for things that we really just took for granted. And you coming back to Haida Gwaii will be a very exciting time.
Oh, I'm so excited to get back. I just miss the ocean, man. You know what I mean? Like you just get so used to things and having it. And I am enjoying the time. Like I feel so blessed to have this extra time with my newborn son, and just being able to see him grow like on a daily basis. Like I kind of came back to work. I was a stay-at-home dad, as you know, for I don't know how long, 8 months. So I was off of work. And I came back during the pandemic when essentially everything was really shut down and things were super strict. So I came back under this paranoid notion of like, I'm going to get this virus if I go to work. I've kind of loosened up. Not the way that I perform. It's still like, hand sanitizer, social distancing is all important, and, stuff like that. So yeah, it's definitely been an adjustment. And I'm definitely not enjoying this pandemic at all. But you got to find light through the darkness, right? Like that's all there is to it. I feel extremely blessed to be in the situation that I'm in right now. But Pat, I'd like to pivot the conversation away from that. And you got some excited things coming up in the future. You're actually on a podcast, and I'd love to promote your future podcast that you have coming up. It's kind of in the conceptual way. I don't know how far along you are with it. Are you willing to chat about that a bit?
Yeah, totally. And so podcasting is something I've always wanted to do, but I never really felt like I had too much to say, or, that I'd be interested enough that people that would want to listen would find me. But, I've had a lot of ideas for creative projects I've been wanting to do. And one of them was really trying to find an interesting and entertaining way to educate people, to bring awareness to topics that often don't get a lot of, recognition, especially in schools. Like I was raised in a school and, a curriculum that didn't care about Indigenous people or history. Like all of our history was summed up in one chapter of, grade 9 textbook. And that really just kind of set me on this big mission to learn more, to educate myself, to have conversations. And a big part of what I do is taking all these lessons that I've learned, all this history, all this knowledge, and trying to share it, to disseminate it to other people. And so this is like kind of coming into a new podcast. I was originally envisioned to kind of be a YouTube series, but like after kind of thinking about more and more, it's like we really need to kind of get in depth in a lot of things. And so this series is going to be called Education for Settlers. And it's really just trying to take a non-judgmental, non-attacking approach in trying to tell the difficult history of Canada and, basically the topics relating to Indigenous peoples that a lot of people either don't understand, don't have any interest, or maybe they're too afraid to even ask in fears of sounding ignorant or something like that. And so essentially I just kind of want to tackle big topics, small things. The first episode is going to be about terminology. So what do you call us? Are we Indigenous? Are we Indian? Are we Aboriginal? Are we First Nations? Are we Métis? Or like, you can rattle off so many different things, including slurs, which we get into as well. And so a lot of people just don't know, and by no fault of their own, like we just have a really lacking system when it comes to education around anything Indigenous. And so I want this series to be able to enlighten people in an entertaining way that can really hopefully start bridging a lot of the divides that we see, in Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities.
First off, love the concept. Can't wait to hear the content that comes out of that. And I think it's a need, and we're living in, I don't know what to, like, it's kind of like there's such extremism on both sides. And for myself, like I can speak for myself, and maybe yourself, you've felt a lot of the different identity crisis as well. I'm a half-breed. My father, who is Haida, he shacked up with what many people would call a white woman. And so that created, we're this generation of we're not Haida enough to be Haidas, and we're not white enough to be white. So I think in that turn, it creates an identity crisis, and I don't want to get into too many of that. But for myself, the terminology, it's so tough to figure out, like, what do we want to be called? And this divide that's there is just, it's so rooted in us. as a people, as Canadians. It's us and them. It's them and us. You know, we hold our own special events where nobody else is welcome to, and it's such a strange world to navigate being Indigenous. And I think this is going to help a lot of people, and including Indigenous people as well, to start thinking about their own identity and the use of these different terminologies and how it affects other people. So I'm super excited to see that. Is that like, you know, is that kind of, do you feel some of the same sentiment there?
Oh, totally. Being a very white passing Native person as well. You know, my dad is, as Kiefer would say, a white guy, a white boy.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, it's something like I've always struggled with my identity, you know, being a very, you know, white looking Haida growing up on the reservation. And definitely I felt that played a big part in the way I was raised and how people responded to me. And then going to the city like Vancouver and basically having no connection to Indigenous culture or community and being kind of erased as far as an Indigenous person. And then coming back home, and it's something I struggled with for so much of my life. And now I feel very confident in who I am and my identity. A big part of it is being connected to community, having community, and, you know, claim you. And so that's been big for me. So now I'm very sure in who I am, but I kind of wanted to, you know, have conversations and share like my struggles, like for most of my life with identity, kind of explore that. Where does that come from? And a lot of it comes from just being in a colonized society where, you know, we feel less than if we don't know our language. We feel less than like if we can't dance or sing traditional stuff. And, you know, we create this weird class system amongst ourselves, which is really, you know, it's a form of lateral violence that has been instilled in us by, you know, colonial institutions that their entire intention is to assimilate us so they don't have to deal with the Indian problem anymore. And so the only way we're going to get away from that is to start understanding how we got to that point and having those conversations and growing and healing in that capacity. So I'm hoping that the conversations I have, the topics that I'm able to explore with other people who know like way more than I do, bring those voices into the room and be able to just share and learn and heal. So I'm excited to kind of really jump into education for settlers in that capacity.
Now, do we have a timeline? Because I'm starting to get excited. I'm like, when can I listen to the first episode? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So first episode's written. It's all like it's written, and I've been working with a great collaboration partner, Bronwyn Marsden. She is my settler for this. She's great at you know, doing research and preliminary scripts. So essentially, how the process works is that she will come prepared with a bunch of questions that, you know, she might have and other people may have for an Indigenous person that they might be too afraid to actually like ask publicly. And so she'll come with a bunch of questions, just ask me. And so it'll just stem into a conversation. And then she'll take fantastic notes and just back all that up with tons of research going into all the, you know, history books and do the due diligence, and then kind of take that as a launching off point to have conversations with other very knowledgeable Indigenous folk from across the country, and then kind of tie that all together into an episode. And so first episode's written, and I'm going to have interviews starting tomorrow with some of these amazing Indigenous, you know, writers and thinkers. And hopefully in the next week or two, once I've kind of massaged it, refined it a bit more, then I can publicly launch it.
Okay, we'll definitely be sharing that link for sure to check that out. That's super exciting. And you know, just to kind of sort of stay on the subject, you and I, we've both been heavily involved with what's called the Haida Gwaii Youth Assembly. Which was kind of a concept based out of the Young Entrepreneur Symposium that we've both attended in the past. And I still think that there's so much room to evolve that. But one of the most beautiful things about the Haida Gwaii Youth Assembly in particular is, you know, we have this knack of segregation, of this knack of, I don't know if it's apartheid, if I'm using the correct word, but again, it's just continuing. It continues and perpetuates that us and them will hold a First Nation conference. They're super popular, and I guess there's nothing wrong with them. It's still, you know, continue to have them. But if youth in particular want to be involved in these conferences, I think there's no way we should be turning them away. We should in fact be inviting them into these conferences with our people and getting them to learn, how we are and build those friendships and those lasting relationships. So that was one thing about the Haida Gwaii Youth Assembly is, of course, on Haida Gwaii, we're in a unique situation where there are settler communities basically right next to Indigenous communities. And there's a lot of that us and them on Haida Gwaii. And it's always kind of been that way, especially when I was a youth on Haida Gwaii. It was definitely, there was like the Port kids, the Queen Charlotte kids, the Sanspit kids. Then there was the Skidegate kids. Then there's the Massa kids and the old Massa kids. We're all kind of like broken up into different,
Don't forget about the Toe Hill kids.
We don't. Anyway, no, I'm just kidding. Shout out to the Toe Hill kids. They're all pretty awesome. But, just to be involved in something that was led by the Council of the Haida Nation at the time. And there was a bit of a back push to not have, to just have it for the Haida youth. And I just did not want to be involved. And then, of course, you backed me fully because you were right on the ground zero for when we started. We actually did the Haida Gwaii Youth Symposium first, which was in 2012 when we first met. And we've kind of just advanced things from there. If you don't know and you're still listening to the LPOG podcast here, check out the links, the Haida Gwaii Youth Assembly videos. All you have to do is type in Haida Gwaii Youth Assembly. We've got videos from, 2013 to last year. Different music videos and stuff like that. And I definitely see the Haida Gwaii Youth Assembly as applicable to so many different communities. And it's so valuable. It's such a resource to have, and just the relationships that are built out of there and the knowledge that is gained from the youth. It's something so special. So maybe you just want to add on to a little bit of what I'm saying and back me up here, Pat.
Yeah, I think you kind of definitely spoke and brought awareness to some of the challenges that we do have, especially when you do have Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities living in such close proximity. You often get a lot of, just racism that comes out of it. And you see that on both sides. And a lot of it, like, especially for Indigenous folk, a lot of it comes from trauma and hurt and pain. It's not right, but it's just a fact of how it is. But I've seen so much progression, so much change. And, it's not even just solely based on racism. A lot of it's just based off of tribalism in a sense. Because I remember just the rivalries and feuds just between villages and all that. It's something that dates back for so long. But I think when you don't communicate, when you don't get a chance to empathize with the person beside you, you easily get into a place where you start othering them, where you kind of, as you mentioned earlier, say us and them. And I think especially when you look at communities that have been through so much trauma, I think it's necessary to have space that's just safe for us. We need to hold that space because there still is a lot of healing left to do. But I also, there needs to be space for dialogue and those interactions and that relationship building to happen. So I think there's room for both spaces, and they're both very necessary. And as much as we have Indigenous only or Haida only gatherings, I think it's just as important and very valuable to have, cross-cultural gatherings as well that really promote that relationship. Because on Haida Gwaii, the population's roughly half and half Haida, the other half non-Indigenous. And, doesn't matter how you were raised, what upbringing you have, what ethnicity you have, what your background is, we all live on Haida Gwaii. We're on an island together. We have to support one another. And that's what I see beautifully exemplified in the Haida Gwaii Youth Assembly, is you have youth who don't necessarily have these ingrained divides, this bigotry that sometimes lives through generations. This is like a blank slate. And if you start early in giving them opportunities to grow and to be able to share and build those relationships, guess what? Within one generation, you can have these infighting and these, bad, feuds completely erased just in being able to invest in young people and them having the opportunity to grow and heal. So it's amazing. And I've seen so much of that just in the short time we've been doing the Haida Gwaii Youth Assembly. I think it's something that, not only has made Haida Gwaii a much more beautiful and healthier place, but it's something I could see being adopted and used everywhere around the world that could really, really benefit us, collectively as a society.
Definitely. I mean, there's been so many powerful moments throughout every youth assembly that there's so many highlights. And, through life, you tend to forget things. Like, and different experiences. But for me, I can always remember, the Haida Gwaii Youth Assembly and the different things that we've held and done, and it's always turned out great. But yeah, I definitely feel like, I guess to my point, it's just we need to give our youth a chance to get along, and we don't, as adults, need to create that divide between them, because there's definitely a divide. I mean, like you said, we're in our 30s now. I'm not going to say how old I am. I think I'm a bit old. But that's not too long.
As the kids on TikTok are calling us, #over30.
Boomers, bro. We are boom. No, wait. Let's see the shirt. Can we see the shirt a bit?
Oh.
Oh yeah, we could see that. I can think. Yeah. God, that is beautiful. That is awesome. I introed you on air today as a handsome dude from Skidegate. So.
Deadly. Hawa.
But yeah, just moving along here, Pat. Like, what are kind of your hopes and ambitions, for that podcast? What are some other initiatives that you see? Like, you have such a global sense, and again, the future's so uncertain. But aside from that, like, what are your hopes of creating? Because I know you got big plans, and I think it's so like powerful. Like, everything I just put out into the universe, just tends to happen a little bit more. So I think it's good to just speak things into fruition. That's why I always talk about winning the lottery, even though I don't play it. But someday I'm going to win the lottery. And what project would you like to get funded if I ever won the lottery?
Oh gosh, Keith is going to be my sugar daddy. Oh, that's exciting. All right. So this is on air. So I'm going to hold you to this. For me, my number one passion is filmmaking. I love to tell stories, and I usually tell them in smaller capacities, working with communities, working with youth. I definitely have some ideas kicking around that, I'm really excited to tell. One of them in particular is exploring Indigenous futurism. So I think there's a lot of potential to be able to explore what could a future look like from Indigenous perspectives and Indigenous values? Because there's definitely a need to tell stories of the past. There's definitely a need to tell stories of the present. But I don't feel that there's as much being focused on the future. And so I kind of want to explore different ideas. And I've been working with a great, Inuit writer, Emily Henderson, on kind of taking some of these ideas and writing them into a series of short films that could essentially be like an anthology feature, like 6 short films that each kind of explore a different element of Indigenous futurism. So one of my youth, actually, Nano, pitched a really awesome idea, which is kind of exploring the question, why have the supernatural beings stopped revealing themselves to us? Kind of like how Game of Thrones, magic used to exist in the world, but for whatever reason, Children of the Forest and magic started disappearing. And so the show picks up where people don't even believe in it anymore. So what if all of our legends, all of our histories, like all of that was true? It just, we don't see it anymore for whatever reason. Or exploring the ideas of, soon enough we'll have, implants and cybernetics and stuff like that. What could it mean to explore being a cyborg where Indigenous people are literally being assimilated into another culture? It's like it's almost like a more positive, upbeat, and hopeful version of Black Mirror. It could be cool to kind of tell those kind of stories. And so, work with youth, make more films, just try and do things that can really tell positive, uplifting stories, because I think that's what we need most at this point, is a bit more positivity and hope. And so, just working on that. I feel like I'm kind of a leaf on the wind. I go wherever I need to be, wherever things kind of blow me.
No, so good to have that different perspective, because we don't have these stories. Like, like even this right now, there's only a handful of Indigenous podcasts out there, and we're automatically Indigenous because we're Indigenous. We're not going to call a white person's podcast that white podcast. We're not going to call Joe Rogan's podcast that white podcast. But automatically LPOG, we're an Indigenous podcast. I don't know. That's just the way the world works. Mm-hmm. And we just don't get to see us on screen enough. You know what I mean? Like, Adam Beach was only in Suicide Squad for like 5 minutes. That was jacked up for that dude, man. I was hyped.
And then he got his head blown off right away.
Spoiler alert. Put the spoiler alert down below.
Oh, it happened in the first few minutes.
But just to yes, it's new, like, and it's exciting. And, you know, you're kind of the first generation to really bring it to these different communities where they didn't think that that was an opportunity. Like on a whim, when I was 14 years old, I jumped in on a youth film project. And I never thought I would have a career in front of a camera or even a mic. I didn't even think it was an option. You know what I mean? And you're bringing those opportunities to such remote communities and showing them what they can do. And that was even before, like, I think I even had dial-up back when we were shooting these film projects. So just to instill that and show that there's different career paths out there. So it's insane to think that what might come out of the future of doing that. Have you followed up with anybody that you've worked with, and have they, you know, are they pursuing that? Because they've got to be inspired by your presence. I know you've done a lot of work with like the Northwest ACE program and talking about social entrepreneurship. So there's like little seeds. You're like a freaking gardener, dude. You're out here planting all over the world. Some of them got to be blossoming, Pat. Are they blossoming?
I've been super proud of so many of my youth and so many of my students, and just seeing them. Like I keep up with a lot of them, and just seeing the progress that they've had, following up with them. You know, it's amazing. So yeah, like sometimes people need to explore to figure out if it's, you know, right for them or not. But the fact that you even just get the opportunity to try it, because this was like, none of this ever existed when I was growing up. I never thought in my life that I would be able to do anything media related. You know, a big part of this is technology advancing to the point where things are accessible. You can film, you know, a movie on your phone and it could get somewhere. I think the biggest thing is just showing that we have the potential and bringing more awareness that we can do this as well. You know, very seldom do we ever get those kind of positive examples, because usually, like when you hear about Indigenous people in the media, what is it typically? We're protesting something again and a white guy shot a Native person. That's often what you hear. Very seldom do you get to hear anything else. And so being able to have that representation and being able to show that we can do it as well is a big part of, you know, keeping me going. It's like what gets me out of bed in the morning. I love what I do, being able to just be creative, but knowing that it could potentially have a trickle down effect. And, you know, yeah, I'm super stoked to see so many of the youth I work with continue on and go in different directions and just see what they create, because I'm over the hill. I'm #over 30, and it's them that are going to be doing the real cool stuff.
Yeah. And I don't think, you know, the potential trickle down effect, I don't think it's a potential. I think it's a reality. I think it's, I mean, you just, every time I talk to you, I feel super motivated, like to continue to do something. That's why I was so excited to have you here on episode number 3 of the LP podcast. And I'm pretty sure you're going to be on a lot more episodes, because I mean, there's such a range of subjects. Like I would love to talk to you about like Netflix series, even like what have you been watching in quarantine? Like what are some of your top shows that you've been, you know, checking out? What should the people check out? Because you're kind of unorthodox in what you watch, and a lot of people, like, you give everything a chance. I feel like I seen you interested in the new Star Trek, and you got me into Letterkenny. Like those are two somewhat polar opposites right there, Letterkenny, and those are two like things that I know you enjoy. So is there anything flying under the radar?
So I actually haven't been watching a ton during isolation. I've been pretty busy, but I've been catching up on some movies. But really, one thing I do a lot is I love watching YouTube. I watch YouTube more than anything else, and often I'm watching tutorials. I'm watching things to kind of just try and learn new skill sets. And something, and I'm going to segue this into another project I've been working on, which is partnering with Taking It Global and their Create to Learn program, which is essentially, it's something super sweet. You can download the app for your phone or iPad or Apple TV, but really it's this project that is trying to support Indigenous creatives across the country during this pandemic time. And so essentially getting these Indigenous creators, which I think we have over 40 creators at this point, who've created tutorial series that are now featured on an app. So if you want to learn from Indigenous creators how to, you know, tan fish hides, or to bead, or to do vector design, or to do like photography, pretty much anything you want to learn, how to fly drones, all that kind of stuff. You can through Create to Learn. So I love watching tutorial videos, and it just makes me more excited to try new things. And that's what I've been watching most. Very little Netflix, but mostly a lot of YouTube and just searching how to do stuff.
Yeah, YouTube is really, really taken over. It's like we're debating canceling our cable right now. I know for myself, I truly enjoy like super trashy TV, like Big Brother, Survivor. I don't know if Survivor's trashy. I love it. Have you watched 90 Day Fiancé?
No, I haven't watched any of that stuff.
Dude, it's a waste of your time. Your time is better spent elsewhere. But yeah, that's the only thing holding me on. But yeah, no, the tutorials, I guess, for cooking that's where I excel. Obviously, you know what I'm saying, big poop. But no, so yeah, no, it sounds like you got a ton of stuff going on, and it's super awesome to talk to you. Maybe we'll wrap things up with a couple final thoughts from yourself, and where can people get a hold of you if they need to get a hold of you on your socials? Like what's the best way? Because I know people are going to want to follow you. You got a dope Instagram. It's lit, as the kids under 30. So yeah.
I've been focusing on my social media a little bit more, just trying to have some fun with it. So if you want to track me down, you can see my personal stuff over at Hey Patrick Shannon. That's my Instagram handle, and I post mostly stories and the occasional, project post and all that. And then I've got my website, patrickshannon.ca. Feel free to go have a gander, and you can even see some of the film projects. And if you want to collaborate or work on something, just give me a shout. And if I can, I would definitely love to hear what you got.
Awesome. Yeah, I know he's definitely if you need a collaborator or anything, Patrick's your guy. And if you're not available, Pat, you have a great network of people who you might know. Get the job done. But again, I just want to thank you, Hawa. There's a Hawa appropriate here, a big Hawa.
Oh, yeah. Hawa.
So thanks for coming on to the LPOG podcast. Love, peace, Oolichan, grease, Patrick, to you. I hope you have a great day and a great rest of the week, bud.
Yes, Hawa, take care of yourself, bud.
Okay.